Your objective for Lesson 18 is I will solve two-step word problems involving all four operations. So one thing I want you to keep in mind today is these aren't just one-step problems. They're two steps. Some of them even have maybe three steps. So I really want you to focus on double checking your work and making sure that you have done every step in the problem because it's really easy to get these types of problems wrong by forgetting a step. So please double check your work and make sure you have answered all parts of the problem before you move on to another one. So we're going to start with our first problem. Joe has $173 in the bank. He earns the same amount of money each week for 7 weeks and put this money into the bank. Now Joe has $208 in the bank. How much money does Joe earn each week? So from this problem, we know that Joe starts with $173 in the bank. He works for 7 weeks and makes the same amount of money each week, and then he puts that money in the bank. Now he has $208. So we are trying to figure out how much money does Joe earn each week. So you think about this and figure out what is the first step that we need to take for us to be able to solve this problem. So I want you to push pause and I want you to think about what is our first step that we need to take. Well, I know I'm going to have to figure out how much money he made each week, but I can't do that yet until I know how much money he had in total for all 7 weeks. And I can figure that out by taking how much money he has in the bank now and subtracting how much money he started with in the bank. So on your board, I want you to write this tape diagram. Remember that whenever we're writing tape diagrams that are for subtraction, the total is always going to be up at the top or down at the bottom. I don't care where you put it. And then you're asking yourself, what do you add to 173 that's going to give you 208? Because something has to go with that that gave us 208. And the only way to figure this out is to subtract them. Whatever the difference is how much goes here. And that is also going to tell us how much money he earned in 7 weeks. Because whenever we find out how much money he earned in all of the 7 weeks, we can figure out how much he earned each week. So on your board, I want you to subtract 208 and 173 to see what's going to go here on your tape diagram. So I want you to push pause to do that. So if I have 208 and I'm subtracting 173, I can take 8 minus 3, and that's going to give me 5. I cannot take 7 away from 0, so I'm going to go over here and borrow from my 2. That's now going to be a 1, and now my 0 is going to be a 10. So now I can take 10 minus 7, which is 3, and then 1 minus 1 is 0, but I don't have to put a 0 there. So that tells me right here that my question mark is actually going to be $35. So $35 is going to tell me how much money he earned in all for the 7 weeks. And then we're going to have to move on to our second step of the problem. Okay, so if it's asking how much money does Joe earn in each week, we know that we're not done because we know how much he earned in 7 weeks. So now we've got to think about how are we going to solve this to figure out how much money he earned each week. We know that for 7 weeks he earned $35. So how are we going to take that $35 in 7 weeks to help us figure out how much he earned each week? So I want you to draw this tape diagram on your board. It's the same tape diagram, but now in this section, I divided it into 7 different sections because we know that he worked for 7 weeks. And we know that in those 7 weeks he made $35. So, am I going to have to multiply or divide or add or subtract to see how much money he made each week if I know that he made a total of $35? Well, it gave me the total and it gave me how many weeks, so I have to take 35 and I have to divide that by 7, and it's going to tell me how much he made each week. So on your board, I want you to figure out this answer. W stands for weeks. So what is W equal to? How much money is he earning each week? Push pause to figure this out. So when you take 35 divided by 7, we find out that he's making $5 each week. So to answer this, we would have put Joe earns $5 each week. So this took some thinking. It took us having to decide what we needed to do first. It took us having to do more than one step. So we are going to move on to the problem set now. If you don't have that out, go ahead and get that out and ready. And if you need to push pause, you can do that. Okay, look at the directions at the top before we get started. It says use the RDW process for each problem. Explain why your answer is reasonable. You don't have to explain anything on your paper, but I do want you to use the RDW process. We use this every week whenever we're doing our math writing. Make sure you read it, underline in your sentences, draw something for each problem, and this W, I want to see you write an equation, and I also want to see you write your answer in a sentence. So I'm looking for a drawing, I'm looking for the equations that you're using, and I'm looking for the answer to be in a sentence. Now most of these are going to be two-step problems, so if you're writing an equation, I should see 2 equations that help you solve the problem. So keep that in mind. Let's look at this first one together. Rose has 6 pieces of yarn that are each 9 centimeters long. Sasha gives Rose a piece of yarn. Now Rose has a total of 81 centimeters of yarn. What is the length of the yarn that Sasha gives Rose? If you need to reread that, go ahead and push pause to do that. Okay, so go ahead and ask yourself, what do we need to do first? What is our first step to this problem? Push pause if you need to think about that. So looking at the information that this problem gives us, it gives us some information to figure out how long Rose's piece of yarn is. Because if we can figure out how long Rose's piece of yarn is, and we know the total length of hers and Sasha's together, then we can find the difference between those two to help us figure out how long Sasha's piece of yarn was. So we know from the first sentence that Rose has 6 pieces of yarn that are each 9 centimeters long. So I want you to draw a tape diagram that shows Rose's 6 pieces of yarn that are 9 centimeters long, and I want you to write an equation to help you solve that. Push pause to do that. So what I was looking for was this for Rose, because I've got 6 sections on the tape diagram, and each one is 9 centimeters long. And I just put R up here at the top because this stands for Rose's yarn. So the equation I was looking for was 6 times 9 is 54 because I have 6 groups and there's 9 in each group. So that tells me that Rose's pieces of yarn are 54 centimeters long. Sasha gives her a piece of yarn, and now she has 81 centimeters of yarn. So if Rose has 54, Sasha gives her a piece, and now she has 81 centimeters of yarn total. What can I do with the numbers 81 and 54 to help find the answer to how long Sasha's piece of yarn is? Push pause. Okay, so if I have 54 and I have 81, all I have to do is subtract those two numbers, and that's going to tell me how long Sasha's piece of yarn is. So if I were to add to my drawing, I would say that here's Sasha's piece, and I know that it is 27 centimeters. So now all we need to do is answer the question to this sentence or to this problem in a sentence. And the question is, what is the length of yarn that Sasha gives Rose? So the sentence I'm looking for is Sarah gives Rose 27 centimeters of yarn. So make sure you write that for number 1. Anytime we're working through these, if you are not getting something right, make sure that you go back and adjust what you have on your paper so it is correct. Okay, we're going to move on to problem 2. Darren spends 39 minutes studying for his science test. He then does 6 chores. Each chore takes him 3 minutes. How many minutes does Darren spend studying and doing chores? So, I want you to reread that, and I want you to think about what is the first step that we need to take to help us solve this problem, and what type of picture are you going to draw to represent this problem. So push pause and think about that. When you're ready to move on, you can push play. Okay, so when I think about this and I'm thinking about a drawing, I know that in my drawing I'm going to have something that represents him studying for his science test and that taking 39 minutes. So in my diagram, I know I'm going to have one section that's 39 minutes, and that's going to be for the science test. So I want you to go ahead and do that on your paper so it shows how long he spent studying. Our next sentence says he then does 6 chores, and each chore takes him 3 minutes. So what can you add to this diagram? Because it's a tape diagram, we're just going to add to it. What can you add to this tape diagram that shows that he does 6 chores and it takes him 3 minutes for each chore? I want you to go ahead and add that here on your problem set. And I want you to write an equation for that addition to your problem set on your piece of paper as well. Push play when you're ready to check it. So I was looking for you to add 6 more sections, and each section has 3 in it because he did 6 chores and it took him 3 minutes to do all the chores. And the equation I was looking for was 6 times 3, and it was equal to 18. So we know from this diagram that for his science test he spends 39 minutes, and up here these are his chores. You can go ahead and write that on your paper, and we know that he spends 18 minutes doing chores. So now what do I need to do to figure out how many minutes he spends studying and doing chores? If he spends 39 minutes studying for his science test and 18 minutes doing chores, what do I need to do with those two numbers to see how long he spends in all doing these two things? I want you to write that equation on your problem set and push play when you're ready to check it. So with those two numbers, you have got to add them together. You didn't have to write it like this. If you put 39 plus 18, that would have been fine as well, but I was just showing you the way that we did it. So 39 and 18 together gives you 57. Now you need to take 57, and I want you to write the answer to this problem in a complete sentence, and push play when you're ready to check it. So Darren spends 58 minutes studying and doing chores is the sentence that I was looking for. You need to change anything on your problem set before we move to problem 3. Go ahead and do that. Number 3 says, Mr. Abbott buys 8 boxes of granola bars for a party. Each box has 9 granola bars. After the party, there are 39 bars left. So how many bars were eaten during the party? I want you to go back and reread that to yourself, and I want you to figure out what do we need to do first, and push play whenever you're ready. Okay, so we know that he has 8 boxes of granola and that each box has 9 bars in it. So we've got to figure out how much he started with to begin with. So I want you to draw a tape diagram for that part of this problem, and I also want you to write an equation that's going to help you find out how many granola bars he has at the beginning of the party. Push pause to do that on your problem set. The tape diagram that I was looking for was this right here. If you labeled it, that's fine. You did not have to though. This shows me that altogether that there are 8 boxes and that there are 9 bars in each box. The equation I was looking for was 8 times 9 is 72. So now I've got to look at the next part of the problem. After the party, there are 39 bars left. So he started the party with 72 bars, and now he has 39 bars left. We are trying to figure out how many bars did get eaten during the party. So what do you need to do with 72 and 39 to help you figure that out? I want you to write that equation on your problem set to figure out how many bars got eaten during the party. And then I do want you to go ahead and write your answer to this problem in a sentence. So push play whenever you're ready to check. So you will have to take 72 minus 39, and that will give you how many bars got eaten during the party, and that is equal to 33. So our sentence would need to say 33 bars were eaten during the party. If your sentence doesn't say exactly that, but it tells me that 33 granola bars were eaten during the party, then you are good to go. Make sure that you have everything down that you need to have for this problem and that you have solved every step. And then we're going to move on to number 4. Okay, number 4 says, Leslie weighs her marbles in a jar and the scale reads 474 grams. The empty jar weighs 439 grams. Each marble weighs 5 grams. How many marbles are in the jar? Go back and reread it and think about what we need to do for this problem. Push pause to do that. So if I'm picturing this in my mind, I'm picturing a jar that has marbles in it, and I'm also picturing a jar that has no marbles in it, because the jar with the marbles in it weighs 474, and the jar without the marbles in it weighs 439. So I've got to do something with those two numbers to first tell me how much do the marbles weigh. I know how much the jar weighs, but to figure out how many marbles are in the jar, when they told me what one marble weighed, I've got to figure out how much do the marbles weigh by themselves without the jar. So I want you to draw 2 pictures. I want you to draw a picture of the jar with the marbles, and then I want you to draw a picture of the jar without marbles, and I want you to label those jars how much they weigh. So one's going to be 474 grams and one's going to be 439 grams. I want you to push pause to draw that and push play when you're ready. So I was looking for this. Here's a jar with some marbles in it, and there's 474 grams. Here's the jar without the marbles, and I've got 439 grams. So what am I going to do with these two numbers to figure out how much the marbles weigh by themselves? What can I do with these two numbers? Push pause to figure that out. So with these two numbers, I've got to subtract them. I've got to take 474 and I've got to subtract 439 from that, and that's going to give me how much the marbles weigh alone. So that gives me that I have 35 grams of just marbles. So whenever we look back up at the problem, it says each marble weighs 5 grams. So if I have 35 grams total, and I have one marble weighing 5 grams, what can I do with those two numbers to help me figure out how many marbles are in the jar? Push pause to figure that out. Well, if I'm thinking of this and I'm thinking of a picture, I'm going to say, okay, this right here is a marble, and I know that this marble is 5 grams because it told me that in the problem. I have got to keep adding marbles until I have 35 grams total. So if I keep adding marbles, I'm going to add another 5, I'm going to add another 5. So far I've got 5, 10, 15. I want you to do this on your paper. Keep adding 5 grams to represent one marble. And you're going to be stopping at 35 grams because that's going to tell you how many marbles are in the jar. So complete this drawing on your paper to see how many marbles are in the jar. Pause to do that. So whenever I kept adding 5 grams, I skip counted, so there was 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and 35 grams right here. When I count how many groups I have, that tells me that I have 7 groups, meaning that there are 7 marbles in the jar. So if I was working with the numbers 35 and 7, what equation goes with that part of the problem that I just did? I want you to write that equation on your piece of paper. So the equation that I'm looking for is 35 divided by 5 equals 7, because we knew how much in all the marbles weighed, and we knew how much one marble weighed. We were trying to figure out how many marbles there were in all. So now that we know that there are 7 marbles in the jar, we need to write our answer in a complete sentence. So go ahead and do that on your paper. Push pause to write it. So I was looking for there are 7 marbles in the jar. Okay, let's move on to question 5. Sharon uses 72 centimeters of ribbon to wrap gifts. She uses 24 centimeters of her total ribbon to wrap a big gift. She uses the remaining ribbon for 6 small gifts. How much ribbon will she use for each small gift if she uses the same amount on each? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let you work this one out on your own. Think about what are the steps, what do you need to do first, make sure you include your drawings, make sure you include your equations, and make sure you answer this problem in a complete sentence. And once you have double checked your work, then you may push play to see if you have your answer correct. Make sure that you change anything to yours that you need to change. So push pause to complete number 5. Okay, I drew a tape diagram. First step I had to take was 72 minus 24 because she used 24 centimeters on a big gift. So I had to take that away, and that left me with so many centimeters of ribbon that she's going to use on her 6 small gifts. So the equation I was looking for this step of the problem was 72 minus 24, and that left me with 48. So now she had 48 centimeters left of ribbon, and she had to use those 48 centimeters for 6 small gifts. So if you were drawing something again, you could have drew another tape diagram, and your tape diagram would have 6 different sections to represent your 6 different gifts. And you're trying to figure out if she has 48 centimeters total, how much is she going to use on each gift? So the equation I was looking for this part was 48 divided by 6. And in the tape diagram, we would have found that she used 8 centimeters on each small gift. So I'm putting 8 in each part of the tape diagram. And to answer this in a complete sentence, I was looking for she will use 8 centimeters on each small gift. If you need to push pause and change any of your work or look over this again, you can do that before we move on to the last problem. Number 6 says 6 friends equally share the cost of a gift. They pay $90 and receive $42 in change. How much does each friend pay? Once again, I want you to go back, reread this, figure out what you need to do first, what are the steps that you need to take to solve this problem. Make sure you're drawing your pictures, writing your equations, and answering this in a complete sentence. Whenever you're ready to check your answer, you can push play. Okay, I know that there are 6 friends, and I know that they are sharing the cost of a gift. That's why I have 6 sections. The first step I had to take was to take 90 minus 42 because they paid $90 and they got $42 in change. So I had to figure out how much did they spend on the gift to begin with because it didn't tell me that. It just told me that they paid this and then they got so much back in change. So I had to take 90 minus 42 and that gave me 48. So I know that the gift cost $48, but 6 friends are paying for this gift, so they have to split that cost and divide $48 among all 6 people. So in my tape diagram, I had 6 different sections for 6 different people, and I know that this whole tape diagram was going to represent $48. I just had to figure out how much each person was paying, and whenever I figured that out, it turned out to be that each person paid $8, and the equation that went with this was 48 divided by 6 equals 8. And the sentence that I was looking for was each friend pays $8. On your problems or on your exit slip, make sure you use the RDW process to solve it. Whenever you're finished and you've double checked your work and you've made sure that you've answered all parts of the problem, I want you to bring your exit slip to me so we can look over it.